Yeah, no, fair enough. That's a good idea. Okay. In regards to this series, Blake, my only I don't even know if this got relayed to you. I guess I could have just told you myself. It's not like we're not friends, but my only note was let's just nerd out about this series. And I have some general questions, but feel free to take it anywhere. But my first question on this series, we could just start here, Raptors Sixers. Do you think the Raptors will at some point in this series change the starting lineup?
I do. And that was one of, I had a series preview go up at sportsnet.ca yesterday. And when I kind of tried to chop it up into really digestible, like paragraph at a time stuff. And so under the Raptors section, I outlined a couple key numbers. And Will, they're numbers that we were talking about back at the All-Star break when we were teeing up the last stretch run of the season.
Yep.
And the number at that time was 299. And now it's 345. That's the number of minutes that presumed starting five has played together. The net rating of plus 0.5 is basically neutral.
Yeah.
That trended in the right direction, and all the 3- and 4-man component lineups there, except one 4-man group with Khem Birch, have been pretty effective. So there's no reason that it can't succeed. But that data suggests to me, especially against a team like that Philadelphia that has Joel Embiid, maybe you're better off with one of those guys coming off the bench, and that's your closing unit, or that's your we need to come back unit, or that's your, hey, Harden's having a turnover heavy game, let's really lean into it with the speed and switchability. The problem with that, and the other number I reference is 1, which is the total number of games those 5 guys have come off the bench, and it was Gary Trent in the opener.
That's right.
So we
had to give Goran his respect.
We've talked a couple times about who would it be. Like Gary Trent is the most prototypical kind of Jordan Clarkson, Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford guy off the bench, or Scotty Barnes has recent experience doing it. But this team has no experience with one of these guys coming off the bench this year. I'd still think it's Scotty Barnes at some point. And maybe they don't even tweak the starters. Maybe Nick Nurse goes back to you guys remember that one stretch of the season where Scotty was coming out like 3 minutes into the game.
Oh, yeah.
And then Khem Birch would come in, or Precious Achiuwa would come in. I kind of think that's likelier than a starting lineup change, just as a matter of not having it feel like you're demoting one of these guys.
Again, it's the playoffs. Like, I don't think there'll be any shame in it. Really,
they're all going to play 40 minutes.
Exactly. Well, and it's all about having the right matchups out there. And I think, to me, it just doesn't make sense if the other team's biggest threat is Joel Embiid and your best defender against Joel Embiid is Precious Achiuwa. Why would you not have Precious start so that you have a higher chance of matching his minutes? So that when Embiid sits, you can have Precious sit, or you can, at least you don't have to bring him in early where maybe Embiid already gets going with 2 or 3 baskets because the Raptors can't, first off, let's even start there. Let's say the Raptors do go with the original starting 5. What are the defensive matchups for the Raptors? Who's guarding Embiid?
I would think OG. OG is, I think, the strongest of those 5. Obviously, they're going to switch a ton and they're going to throw a lot of different looks at him. Yeah. And you could try Scotty down there, so you can have OG on James Harden. I think kind of no matter what, Siakam's been so good in this kind of free safety-ish role where he can help a little bit and be the backline rim protect. I think you want Siakam on Tobias Harris no matter how you shake out the other ones. But the truth is we both were watching film at the same time and posted almost an identical screenshot yesterday.
Yep.
They are going to full-on quadruple team Joel Embiid if they need to, and they are not going to pay any attention to a Matisse Thybulle or probably a Shake Milton and guys like that. So that's where maybe you can make up the size deficiency. But yeah, I think, one of the risks you run there is A, getting behind, B, your bench units aren't quite as capable of taking advantage of the Paul Reed or DeAndre Jordan minutes, and C, okay, if the reason you're starting those 5 guys is because you want them available for so much of the game and you want to potentially close with them, getting one of those guys in early foul trouble because they're guarding Joel Embiid is a little risky. Now, you can manage around foul trouble just like you can manage around starting these 5 and still having Precious play a lot of minutes off the bench. But if you're laying out a 48-minute rotation on paper, it looks a little more functional and easier to manage if Precious Achiuwa is starting, whether in place of Scotty Barnes or Gary Trent or whatever you do there.
Yeah, I would. And listen, there is some merit to the continuity of the group. There is some. I'm not insensitive to, you're coaching people, right? So you got to manage their feelings and their egos and everything like that. But when you're looking at this 5-man group, they haven't played a single second against the Sixers this season.
No, we haven't seen them play a single second against the Sixers this year with Fred and Pascal both available.
Yeah. So Fred was available for only game one.
Mm-hmm.
He dominated with the big onions dance.
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel
got
okay
fined,
about that one.
Got fined and was like, I'm not playing these guys again.
Yep. Got fined. He also got a groin injury out of it somehow. Then you had OG only played game one as well, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because
game two was the everyone's out for COVID game.
Yeah, they had just gotten Gary and Pascal back from COVID. However, when you watch that game, and I highlighted this yesterday, at one point I was watching some tape in the third quarter, and I was thinking to myself, there's only so many minutes and seconds you have in a life, and you only get to live life once. And I'm really re-watching tape where on the Sixers side, they had Tyler Johnson, who was a hardship exception guy.
Former max player, no? Oh, he had a huge contract.
He had a huge contract.
He got like $560 or something.
Furkan
like
Korkmaz, who was out of the rotation for them. Seth Curry, who's been traded. And then Georges Niang alongside of Joel Embiid. Those two guys are still in the rotation for Philadelphia. On the Raptors side, Pascal was in the middle. Tremont Waters was out there along with DJ Wilson. Both guys hardship exception signings. And then it was like Utah and Malachi, who are not in the rotation. So you have to throw away some of the regular season matchups, but ultimately,
I
these guys haven't been healthy.
I threw out the first two games, honestly.
Exactly,
like I think it was helpful for Fred because you're still facing some of the same length challenges and rim challenges.
It's Andre Drummond at center instead of Joel Embiid.
And it was, it's pre-James Harden. There's a lot of noise there. And then the last two games, at least Philly's rotation looked, so we got to look of, hey, what do they look like with Matisse Thybulle and without Matisse Thybulle?
Offense was a lot better.
Yeah, no OG and Fred in either of those games.
Yep.
And that explains kind of why, as good as Toronto's defense was, they struggled to score a little bit. But I took some encouraging signs from those two games. You beat Philly, you beat a playoff opponent twice in tight games without two of your starters. Mm-hmm. You got to feel okay about that.
Especially because one of those games they hit 19 threes and the Raptors still beat them. Now, of course, the Raptors are also quite hot from three. That was the game where Precious was hitting 5 threes in a game, which included a step back three and also a transition pull up.
I got asked about that one a couple times by Philly fan friends of mine who are just like, do we have to actually expect this? Do we have to actually prepare for this? I'm like, you absolutely do not prepare for it, but everything is on the table with Precious Achiuwa when he has the ball.
Listen, Precious Achiuwa in this series, his role is to be Serge Ibaka, Game 7 over Ben Simmons. Do you prepare for that? No. Can you prepare for that? I guess. But when it hits you, it's going to hit different.
It's going to be soul crushing.
Yeah, tell them about the hit different 3-point rankings. Alex.
Yeah, so we had to hit different 3-point rankings
3 points
with the Raptors,
points,
right?
You know?
And I think Precious is at the top of that list for
Absolutely,
the Raptors, like a clear number one.
Because when he hits the three, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
And especially because he's expanded from beyond just shooting the corner ones now, right?
Yeah.
Like when they're above the break, like
he's
we got to
hitting
split those
now,
up
too.
too.
Yeah, he's hitting those.
Yeah, because it's obviously the corner three is the first progression, and then I think the second progression, or the first for a lot of centers, is you're the last man up. You're that JV trailer three, right?
Yeah.
But Precious isn't doing that. He's hitting like full on transition wing threes.
Yeah.
Where like that's the same spot Pascal always looks for Fred when they're coming up in transition. So I do think they hit a little different. And in this series, if you're looking at how you're going to guard Toronto. Will, you used this stat a couple weeks ago, maybe even a couple months ago at this point. Fred and Pascal are among the most double-teamed players in the entire NBA. Mm-hmm. We saw during the championship run what teams tried to do to Serge Ibaka, and it was like, look, if your big man that only has a spotty shooting track record hits a bunch of long twos or threes, that's something you're going to have to live with to limit Pascal and limit Fred. And if Gary's going, especially the games without Thybulle, when it's not really clear what you're going to do with Gary as the 76ers, you got to give up something in the same way the Raptors are going to let their lesser wings shoot a lot of threes. I think you're giving Precious Achiuwa carte blanche to shoot a lot of those top threes if you're Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So if he comes through, I mean, what did he finish at? 34.5% this year or something like that?
I think the stat was he's 39 of 100 from three post All-Star break.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you'll take that. You'll take even a couple percentage points off of that for sure.
Yeah. No, it's listen, I think he's going to be. I think you picked him as your X factor for the series.
You picked Gary, right?
I picked Gary.
Yep.
And I guess, the topic of Gary is going to be very interesting because I actually have a concern more necessarily about not how they're guarding Harden, but how they're guarding Maxey. Because to me, when I was watching the tape, so they were like, generally speaking, like somewhat willing to help off of Maxey, trusting that they can close back out on him. The nice thing about Maxey from Philly's perspective, he can attack a closeout. He's really quick. He's smart about it too.
Harden's addition has really unlocked some stuff with Maxey.
Right, because now he gets to play in single coverage all the time. The Raptors only played Maxey in single coverage. In fact, I would say even less than single coverage because they were helping off of him, so they were not in set position guarding him when he had the ball and swung over to him. And I was thinking about it. Fred is usually your guy to guard a really quick attacking guard like that. But at the same time, in this series, I want Fred to dig down and swipe at the ball against Embiid as much as possible. He's also really good at the heavy hands thing. And to me, if you're using Fred on the Maxey assignment, that means that you are now helping off a guy who is really good at attacking closeouts. So would it make more sense to put a guy like Gary on Maxey and put Fred on someone who you can more willingly help off of, like a Matisse Thybulle? Even when Danny Green's out there, they'll help off of Danny Green as well. If Danny Green beats you with 6 threes again, good for him. But he hit 6 threes and the Raptors still won. But in any case, where do you stand on that? Who was Fred guarding?
Yeah, here's the thing: is Maxey's an even better shooter than Danny Green this year. Not at the same volume, not with the same track record, but he's hit 43% on over 4 3-point attempts a game.
Yeah,
this is a guy who is the shooting slashing combination. He's really, really effective offensively. So the honest answer is the Raptors are going to switch these matchups a ton, right?
Okay, yeah.
And it might depend a little bit how Philly's lining up, where like the Raptors switch assignments on the fly so much, and particularly in transition defense, that Fred's assignment might not be a guy. It might be what perimeter player is on the strong side with Embiid. Okay. And just whoever's on that side of the floor is Fred's guy, and Gary's picking up the weak side guy so he can, whether it's zone up the two guys on the weak side so Pascal can help down, or, if they're guarding it more straight up one-on-one, I could see them going with it that way. There's a little bit of room for confusion. You're basically running a transition zone defense at that point because everyone's just kind of responsible.
We saw a lot of that in the tape too. So
for a spot on the floor. Everyone's just responsible for a spot on the floor. So that's how I'd probably lean is, okay, let's see what the Sixers' first chess move is. And Fred's just, strong side so he can help on Embiid. And I don't think Philadelphia has the chemistry yet with the Harden Embiid pairing to do something like, we're going to empty out one side, those two run a pick and roll with an overloaded weak side so that you can't help as willingly or whatever.
You could do that, but
you could try, but they don't have that chemistry yet, right?
You can also zone up the weak side there. If you're going to keep all your shooters on one side of the floor, and you have 6'9" guys, that's a good chance.
Or heck, the way the Raptors close out, 1 against 3, whatever.